Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight we invite you to step beyond the veil of reality and into the shadowy realms of the unknown. Welcome to Whispers in the Dark, a journey into the depths of the human psyche and the mysteries that lie beyond our comprehension. In this series, each tale is a labyrinth of secrets and surprises, a journey not just through space and time, but through the inner corridors of the mind. Here, in the world of Whispers in the Dark, nothing is as it seems. The ordinary becomes extraordinary, the familiar turns alien, and the faint whispers in the dark hold truths more profound than the loudest declarations in the light. Tonight's story, like those that will follow, treads the fine line between the real and the surreal, the tangible and the ethereal. It challenges the boundaries of belief and tests the limits of reality. It's a tale of choices and consequences, of secrets hidden in the shadows, and of the unseen forces that shape our destinies. So, I urge you, dear viewer, to suspend your disbelief and open your mind, for in the world of Whispers in the Dark, the only thing more terrifying than the unknown is the possibility that you might actually find the answers you seek. Prepare to embark on a journey where the darkness whispers and its echoes reveal the mysteries of the universe and the enigmas of the soul. This is Whispers in the Dark. Whispers in the Dark, Episode 1, The Man in the Library. The year was 1959. The air was crisp with the lingering scent of aged paper and mahogany. A man awoke to find himself seated in a high-backed leather chair, nestled among rows of towering bookshelves. He was in what appeared to be a grand library, with its walls lined with books of all sizes and colors, and a large, ornate window that cast beams of morning light across the room. By his side, a cup of coffee steamed gently, its aroma rich and inviting. He blinked, his eyes adjusting to the warm glow of the room. "Strange," he murmured, his voice echoing slightly in the vast space. "Where am I? Who am I?" His eyes scanned the room, searching for any clue to his identity or location. The library was silent except for the soft ticking of a grandfather clock standing proudly in the corner. Dust motes danced in the sunbeams, adding to the room's ethereal quality. The man examined the coffee cup. It was fine porcelain with a delicate pattern of vines and flowers. He lifted it, feeling its warmth seep into his fingers. The coffee tasted rich and perfectly brewed, yet he had no recollection of making it or even entering this place. He stood up, his movements slow and deliberate, and glanced down at his attire. He was dressed in a tweed suit, well-fitted and of high quality, yet unfamiliar. His pockets yielded no wallet, no identification, nothing to hint at who he was. Even his own face was a mystery, with no mirror in sight to reveal his features. As he wandered through the aisles of books, he noticed that the titles were equally puzzling. They ranged from ancient texts in languages he couldn't recognize to modern novels that seemed vaguely familiar yet unplaceable. It was as if the library encompassed all of time and space within its walls. The man's footsteps echoed softly as he walked. He felt a peculiar sense of displacement, as though he were both there and not there, existing in a dream or a forgotten memory. The sensation was unsettling, yet there was a curious comfort in the stillness of the library. At the end of one aisle he discovered a globe, its surface worn and faded. He spun it idly, watching the countries blur before his eyes. It was an old model, some of the borders outdated, and the names of countries long since changed. "Am I lost in time?" he wondered aloud, his voice a mere whisper in the grand scheme of the library. He felt a profound sense of isolation, coupled with an inexplicable familiarity with this place. As he continued to explore, the man came across a writing desk, upon which sat an old-fashioned typewriter and a stack of blank paper. Beside it, an ink pen and a notebook lay open, a single sentence written in a neat cursive hand. "To remember is to live again." The word struck a chord in him, evoking a sense of longing and an ache for memories he could not recall. He felt compelled to sit down and write, to pour his thoughts onto the paper in the hope of unlocking the secrets of his identity and this mysterious library. And so, with the first rays of sunlight warming the room and the dust continuing to swirl in the air, the man began to type, his fingers moving with a surprising familiarity across the keys. He did not know what he would uncover, but he was determined to unearth the truth of his existence, one word at a time. Frustrated and confused, the man approached the grand door of the library. It was a massive wooden structure, adorned with intricate carvings that seemed to dance in the strange light. He grasped the handle firmly, turning it with all his might, but the door refused to budge. It was as if it were sealed shut, disconnected from the world beyond. Turning back to the window, he squinted against the light pouring in. It was a brilliant, unwavering glow, unlike any sunlight he had ever seen. In a sudden outburst of desperation, he grabbed a nearby chair, its legs scraping against the wooden floor in a harsh, grating sound. With a mighty heave, he hurled it at the window, expecting the glass to shatter upon impact. But the chair merely bounced off, falling to the ground with a dull thud. The glass remained unscathed, not even a single crack marring its surface. The man stood there, panting, a mix of fear and anger brewing within him. "Okay, get a hold of yourself," he said to himself, his voice echoing in the vast room. "Let's be rational." He took a deep breath, trying to quell the rising panic inside him. He walked back to the desk, his mind racing for logical explanations. Was he dreaming? Was this some elaborate prank? Or something far more sinister? The questions swirled in his head, each more unsettling than the last. He decided to examine the library more closely, hoping to find something, anything that could offer a clue. The books, the furniture, the very walls of the library might hold the key to his predicament. As he wandered among the shelves, he noticed that some books appeared more worn than others, as if they had been frequently handled. Curious, he pulled one out at random. It was an old tome, its leather cover cracked and faded. He opened it, and to his surprise, the pages were blank. He tried another book, and then another, only to find the same empty pages. It was as if the library was a facade, a shell devoid of the knowledge he so desperately sought. The man's attention was then drawn to a painting hanging on one of the walls. It depicted a serene landscape, a stark contrast to the eerie confines of the library. He studied it closely, and for a brief moment, he thought he saw something move in the painting, a shadow flickering at the edge of the forest. He shook his head, dismissing it as a trick of the light, but the incident left him uneasy, the feeling of being watched growing stronger with each passing moment. He returned to the desk, his thoughts a whirlwind of confusion and fear. He needed to document everything, to keep a record in case. In case of what? He wasn't sure. He just knew he couldn't lose himself in this bizarre place. With a determined set to his jaw, he sat down and began to write again, his words a lifeline in the sea of uncertainty that surrounded him. He wrote about the unbreakable window, the unyielding door, the books with their blank pages, and the strange painting. He wrote about his feelings of fear and frustration, his need to understand, to remember. And as he wrote, the man held on to a flicker of hope that somehow, through his words, he would find a way out of this library, a way back to himself. Exhausted from his relentless search for answers, the man eventually succumbed to fatigue. He drifted off into a fitful sleep in the same high-backed leather chair where he had first awakened. Time seemed to blur and warp within the walls of the library, making it impossible to gauge how long he slept. When he awoke, the first thing he noticed was another cup of steaming coffee placed neatly beside him. Panic surged through him as he realized someone, or something, must have been there while he slept. "Who brought this?" he yelled into the silence, his voice tinged with fear and anger. He leapt from the chair, his heart pounding in his chest. The door. He rushed to it, grasping the handle and pulling with renewed desperation. But it remained as immovable as before. Suddenly, the tranquil silence of the library was shattered by the sound of big band music emanating from an old radio set atop a shelf. The tune was unfamiliar, yet hauntingly melancholic. The song was titled "A Long, Long Road to Nowhere and Back," a fitting soundtrack to his inexplicable situation. The music was loud, filling every corner of the library, yet no matter how he tried, he couldn't turn it off. The song played on and on, seemingly for hours, its melody burrowing into his mind, a relentless reminder of his plight. Then, just as abruptly as it had started, the music stopped. The man, now drenched in sweat and breathing heavily, stood in the ensuing silence, feeling as if the song had left an echo of despair in its wake. He turned his attention back to the books, scouring the shelves with a sense of urgency. And then he saw it. A book that seemed out of place, its spine less worn, its cover slightly more modern than the others. He reached for it, his hands trembling as he pulled it down from the top shelf. The book fell open in his hands, revealing pages filled with words, a stark contrast to the empty tomes he had found earlier. The text was written in a hurried, almost frantic hand. It detailed experiences eerily similar to his own, waking up in an unknown library, the unbreakable window, the locked door, the mysterious cup of coffee. But what chilled him to the bone was the realization that this narrative had no conclusion. It just ended abruptly, as if the writer had been suddenly interrupted, or worse. The man felt a cold dread settle over him. Was this book a chronicle of another lost soul, trapped within these walls? Was this library some kind of limbo, a place between places, capturing unwitting souls in its timeless grasp? He clutched the book to his chest, a lifeline in the sea of unknowns. He had to keep writing, to document everything. Perhaps in doing so, he could avoid the fate of the author before him, or at least leave a warning for any who might follow. With a newfound sense of purpose, he returned to the desk and began to write once more, his words a testament to his determination to unravel the mystery of the library and reclaim his lost identity. The man had just finished his writing, his hands weary from penning down the perplexing events of the day. Suddenly a soft knock echoed through the library, startling him. He had been alone in this place, or so he thought, and the unexpected sound sent a shiver down his spine. He stood up, his legs stiff from sitting for so long. With trepidation he approached the door, each step filled with a mix of fear and curiosity. After a moment's hesitation, he grasped the doorknob and turned it. The door creaked open to reveal a tall, thin man dressed in a dark, tailored suit. "May I enter?" the stranger asked in a voice that was calm and measured. "Yes, please," the man replied, his voice barely above a whisper. The stranger stepped inside and introduced himself as Mr. Mantis, the keeper of the library. His presence was imposing, yet there was a certain gentleness in his demeanor. The man was filled with questions. "Why am I here? What is this place?" Mr. Mantis looked at him with a somber expression. "This library," he began, "is not what it seems. You have noticed the books are empty, devoid of knowledge. This place is a reflection of your life, a life led astray by poor choices and actions." The man felt a pang of guilt as memories of his past misdeeds flooded back. He had lived a life marked by selfishness and regret, hurting those around him and shunning the love and care they offered. "You are here because of the path you chose in your life," Mr. Mantis continued. "This library is a space between realities, a place for those who have lost their way." The revelation hit the man like a wave of cold truth. He looked around the library, at the endless rows of empty books, and felt a profound sense of emptiness within himself. "But you have a choice," Mr. Mantis said, breaking the heavy silence. "You can remain here for eternity, trapped in this limbo of your own making, or you can return to your world. Return and try to make amends, to right the wrongs you have committed." The man's heart raced at the thought. The idea of going back, of facing the consequences of his actions, was daunting. Yet the thought of staying in this endless, lonely expanse was even more terrifying. Mr. Mantis's eyes bore into his, a mirror to the man's tormented soul. "The decision is yours. But remember, this choice is not just about where you wish to be, but who you wish to become." The man stood in the center of the library, the weight of his past and the uncertainty of his future pressing down on him. He realized that this choice was more than just a chance to escape. It was an opportunity to redeem himself, to try and bring some good into the world he had taken so much from. With a heavy heart and a newfound resolve, he looked up at Mr. Mantis and made his decision, one that would change the course of his life forever. The man, with a newfound resolve shining in his eyes, firmly declared his decision to Mr. Mantis. "I choose to return," he said, his voice steady. "I want to right my wrongs, to change the path I've been on." Mr. Mantis nodded, his expression grave. "Understand this," he intoned solemnly. "If you fail to make amends, to genuinely change the course of your actions, you will find yourself back here. But next time, it will be to write in these blank pages, to chronicle your failures and misdeeds for eternity. Your soul will belong to this library." The man felt a chill run down his spine at these words. The finality and the weight of the consequence were not lost on him. "There are others here, right now, trapped within these walls," Mr. Mantis continued, gesturing around the vast expanse of the library. "You cannot see them, but they are here. Some have succumbed to madness, their minds unraveled by the endless solitude. Others have retreated into a deep, unbreakable silence, lost in their own regrets and sorrows." The man looked around the library, imagining the unseen souls wandering among the empty shelves, each a prisoner of their own making. The thought filled him with a deep sense of dread. "If you return," Mr. Mantis said, his voice stern, "you must do so with the full intention to alter your destiny. There will be no luck to aid you. It is entirely up to you. Your actions, your choices will determine whether you find redemption or return to this purgatory." The man nodded, understanding the monumental task that lay ahead. He was not just fighting for his life, but for his very soul. Mr. Mantis stepped closer, and for a moment his stern facade softened. "The path to redemption is arduous and fraught with challenges, but remember, true change comes from within. It is not just about righting wrongs, but transforming yourself." With those final words, Mr. Mantis gestured to the door, which slowly creaked open, revealing a blinding light. The man took a deep breath, bracing himself for the journey back to a world he had left behind. As he stepped toward the threshold, he cast one last look at the endless rows of books, the silent guardians of forgotten souls. With a determined step, he walked through the door, the light engulfing him, transporting him back to a chance for redemption, a chance to rewrite his destiny. In an instant, Mr. Phillips, the man who had grappled with the surreal reality of the library, found himself jolted back to life in his own bed. He woke with a cough and a deep, gasping breath, as if surfacing from a long dive in deep waters. His sudden awakening startled both his wife and the doctor who were by his side. His wife, overcome with shock and relief, fainted at the sight of her husband sitting up so abruptly. The doctor, meanwhile, nearly lost his balance, his eyes wide with disbelief. "We both thought you had passed," the doctor exclaimed. "We felt no pulse for the last 15 minutes." Mr. Phillips looked around, his senses heightened. Everything seemed more vivid, more real. He felt the softness of his bed, the warmth of the sunlight streaming through the window. He got up and walked over to the window, craving the fresh air and the touch of the sun on his skin. He opened the window, letting the cool breeze fill the room. Turning back to his wife and the doctor, he recounted his experience in the mysterious library, the encounter with Mr. Mantis, and the choice he had been given. His wife, now coming to her senses, listened with a mix of astonishment and concern. The doctor, a man of science and skepticism, chuckled softly. "This is one for the books," he said, shaking his head in disbelief. "But you seem to be okay, Mr. Phillips." Mr. Phillips knew that what he had experienced was more than a mere dream or hallucination. The vividness of the library, the weight of the decision he had made, and the words of Mr. Mantis still echoed in his mind. He realized that he had been given a second chance, an opportunity to change the course of his life. He looked at his wife, seeing her not just as a part of his life, but as someone he had deeply hurt and neglected in the past. He saw the potential for healing, for rebuilding the bridges he had burned. Determined to make the most of this unexpected return to his life, Mr. Phillips made a silent vow to himself. He would right his wrongs, mend his relationships, and transform himself into a better man. He knew the journey wouldn't be easy, but he was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. As the doctor prepared to leave, assuring them that he would return to check on Mr. Phillips, the man felt a renewed sense of purpose. He had been to the brink and back, and now he had a mission to fulfill, to become the person he was meant to be, to live a life worthy of the second chance he had been granted. Mr. Phillips, feeling a newfound appreciation for life's simple pleasures, exclaimed, "I'm so very hungry, let's go eat." He was ready to embrace the normalcy of everyday life, eager to make the most of every moment. Just as they were about to leave the room, his wife stood up, a look of recollection crossing her face. "There's a man outside I was talking to before you woke," she said. "He knocked on the door, and I let him in. He's here with a contract for that large library you've always dreamed of building." A sense of foreboding washed over Mr. Phillips as he walked into the living room. Standing there was a tall, thin man, his presence unmistakably familiar. "Hello, Mr. Phillips," the man greeted with a polite nod. "I'm Mr. Mantis, and everything seems to be in order. All I need is your signature." As Mr. Phillips looked at the paperwork, Mr. Mantis gave him a creepy wink, a silent reminder of their encounter in the otherworldly library. The man's heart skipped a beat, a chill running down his spine. This couldn't be a coincidence. The realization that Mr. Mantis had followed him into this world was both shocking and terrifying. Without a moment's hesitation, Mr. Phillips shoved the paperwork away and firmly stated, "No, I will not be building a library." His decision in the other realm had been clear. He would not be swayed by temptations or reminders of what he had left behind. Mr. Mantis's expression turned to one of an almost sinister disappointment, his grin taking on an evil tinge. "Well, I'll be around if you ever change your mind," he said, his tone implying an ominous undercurrent. As Mr. Mantis left the house, Mr. Phillips felt a sense of relief mixed with vigilance. He knew that his decision to change his life for the better had just been tested, and he had passed. But the encounter was a stark reminder that his journey of redemption would be fraught with challenges, both from within and without. He turned to his wife, taking her hands in his. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice filled with sincerity. "I've been given a second chance, and I intend to use it to be the husband you deserve, the man I should have been all along." His wife, tears welling up in her eyes, embraced him. It was a moment of reconciliation, a first step toward mending a relationship long strained by his past behavior. Mr. Phillips knew that the road ahead would be difficult. He would have to confront his demons, make amends, and rebuild his life piece by piece. But he was ready. He had seen what lay on the other side, and he was determined to make his second chance count.